My name is Ange Tringa. I'm a certified BodyTalk practitioner and instructor here in Missoula. And first, I just want to welcome you and thank so many of you for coming tonight. It's really exciting to see how much the energy around this body of work is building and how many people are excited to learn more about BodyTalk. We have a really, really exciting speaker here tonight. Dr. Kaimi Pilipovich is one of our senior BodyTalk instructors, and he's the Senior Vice President of the International BodyTalk Association. He's come from Hawaii to be here tonight and for this weekend, and it's really a great honor because Kaimi is invited to speak all over the world, and so to have him here in Missoula with us is really a wonderful honor. His background is in massage therapy and acupuncture, so he brings a very unique perspective to the work. And I guess on a personal note, I was thinking about what I wanted to say when I introduced him tonight. And I studied BodyTalk for some time. I became a practitioner, and I was already in training to become an instructor when I took my first seminar with Kaimi. And that's when I felt that I really learned BodyTalk. And that comes from the clarity that he offers when he teaches, from his humor, from his incredible wisdom and background, and really just a brilliant presenter and a brilliant lecturer. So I'm very, very excited to introduce him to you tonight. So thank you.
I'll see if I can live up to that introduction. So it's an honor to be here. I do get to travel all around the world teaching this work. And but it's always exciting to have a big room full of people checking out something new and being open-minded to embrace something really new. And it was nice. Thank you, Ange, for having people raise their hands who knows about BodyTalk, who's had it, who studied it, and who is like, what is this stuff? Because this lecture is for all of you. This is the most amazing and the most scientific system of healthcare I've come across. And although it's quite a leap of departure of how we usually think about healthcare, I actually think it's the most common sense, most scientific approach to it. And it's so simple that we actually have people who have no healthcare background who take some of the beginning courses who can really do good things with people. They can actually make a really positive, dramatic impact on other people's health with either we actually have a day seminar for the really short course, and then a long weekend seminar to introduce to the system. And so it's so simple that really anybody can actually do the work and get effective results. The other part of it that's amazing is the very same system is so powerful that myself as an acupuncture physician find that it's what I do in practice. And my results are so much more dramatic than when I used to have to diagnose patients and then do acupuncture and herbology and body work and manipulation and so on to try to get them healthy. And I did help people that way. But I helped them faster, I helped them more permanently, and at a deeper level since I started doing this work. And to me, that's a big statement to say that you're a physician and a simple system replaces everything else you do. It's our training as physicians to evaluate and educate our patients as to their conditions. What we really use in our practice to actually get results is BodyTalk. And that's a pretty powerful statement for something that's actually a simple idea. When I get to it shortly, the idea can be expressed in like a couple of sentences. And normally we think of, well, to be a doctor, you have to go to school for umpteen years, right? So there's no way that the simple explanation can actually suffice. And we keep looking for a more complicated explanation when it's not really necessary. And so what I find in teaching people to do BodyTalk, I can teach them to do BodyTalk in a weekend. What's hard is to get them to explain it. So I find these lectures are both educational for the general public who wants to see, well, what is this? And I want to know a bit about it before I go sign up for an appointment to try it. But I also find it's quite a boon for patients who are already receiving it, and they enjoy the results, but they don't really quite understand how it works. And I find it's actually useful for a lot of the practitioners because so much of the time, and this was me in the early days of practice, was that somebody asked me, well, so what is BodyTalk? And I'd say, it's cool. And it's fast. And it works. And, you know, and sooner or later they want an explanation beyond simple declaratives, right? So with that, let me try to explain what it is and how it works, and how such a simple idea can address so many things, because virtually every condition that people come to my office with, I can help. I can help at least some, maybe actually get them completely over their condition. And that doesn't matter whether or not it's a learning disorder, or it's back pain, or it's a hormonal imbalance, or a heart condition, or a digestive disorder, or fibromyalgia, or chronic fatigue, or chronic allergies, or you know, just difficulties in dealing with life in terms of emotional stress. And I do it with no tools other than my hands and that chart over there. And that's all I use. Actually, when I travel now, I no longer take my kit. I used to always travel with my needle kit because I'm an acupuncturist, right? So, and that was the tools of my trade. And I stopped carrying my kit around a couple of years ago. This is what I bring, and that's all I need. So it's quite something. Now, I started off by saying I think BodyTalk is the most scientific approach to healthcare I've found. And I want to justify that a little bit by saying it leverages off of the most documented principle in medicine. That is that the body does heal itself. There is nothing that has been documented more times than in more ways than that the body is constantly healing itself. All the time, without our help, actually. So, and yet, most of the research money goes into not exploring understanding that mechanism in more detail and how to harness that mechanism more powerfully. It goes into better Band-Aids. When you think of it, if you cut yourself and you put a Band-Aid on it, does the Band-Aid heal the wound? I don't think so. We all know that. It heals all by itself. Why? The Band-Aid keeps it clean at best, and that's it, right? So it does nothing to actually heal the wound. So that's actually a little bit of a miracle right there, you know, when you pause to think about it. I actually broke down and bought a new car 2 years ago after driving old cars for a long time. And I went a whole year before somebody put a scratch in it in the parking lot, and I was a little bit crushed. But every day I walk out to my car and I look, and the scratch is still there. Now, I paid $18,000 for that car. Why doesn't it self-heal, right? So, you know, we not only heal things like that, we know this, but we don't talk about it often enough. We are replacing cells in our body as we speak. Every tissue in our body is replaced on an absolutely continuous basis. So your entire red blood cell population is replaced about every 4 months. So I forget how many trillions of blood cells that is, but it's a lot. So since we've been here, you've all actually made several million new cells in your body. That's going on all the time. Most of us have heard the statistic where we know that you make new skin every 30 days. You're sloughing off. That's part of what you vacuum up. I'm sorry, but you know, that's what you vacuum up is partially that. And that's what the dust mites in your carpet eat, is you, right? So now I know it was just past dinner a little bit here. I'm not saying that to be, you know, indelicate, but the skin is the largest organ in your body. And it's replaced in its entirety every 30 days. That's phenomenal. It's not just the skin that's replaced. Your muscles are getting replaced. Your bones are replaced within a year. Your bones are actually changed over. We used to think that nervous system tissue didn't regrow. that turns out to be wrong, and there's ample research that shows that now. I don't know if many of you saw, there was an article in the paper a few months ago about a guy who'd been in a car accident and gotten brain damage and been in a coma for 20 years, and he woke up. And the CAT scans showed that he'd actually regrown part of his brain. And so they don't know why, but it did. And in practice with more study, they've realized that the brain does actually regrow. They used to think when you'd had a heart attack, that was it. The heart muscle doesn't regrow. They've changed their mind on that once they actually started looking, you know, and doing examination. Every cell in your body gets replaced over time. All your cells are essentially brand new. Here's one that always seems to surprise people. Anybody remember from college physiology class how often your stomach lining and intestinal lining gets replaced in its entirety? 3 days. 3 days. So I have two questions when I think about things like that. Number one, why am I losing my hair? Okay, that's a personal question, right? So, number two, how could somebody have an ulcer longer than 3 days? Right? What I'd like to throw out as a simple metaphor, if you will, is how many people have a PC? All right. Okay. Do you ever have to reboot? Yeah, the commercials are right. You know, the PC Macintosh commercials, right? We don't have to reboot. Well, that's not true. The Macintosh people have to reboot as well. But every once in a while, the operating system gets confused, and it loses track of things, and it starts to go awry. And the only way to get the computer to run again is to reload the operating system, to reboot it, to reset it. The computer isn't broken at that point, is it? It's just your memory, or in this case, the computer's memory. In our case, it's really our memory. We've forgotten what it takes to run the body, basically. So, in simple terms, BodyTalk is kind of like the reset button or the reboot button for the body, to reload the operating system. Because if all my cells are brand new, and all your cells are brand new, why do we appear to age unless we've started to get, I used to be a computer scientist before I was a doctor, computer memory faults, right? That we've lost attention of what's going on in the body. So, now there's another aspect of healing that has been studied extensively. Beyond this continual replacement, there's also exceptional healing that goes on in people where they get over their ulcer spontaneously. They get over their cancer spontaneously. They get over all kinds of conditions spontaneously. And this effect is so well documented that billions of dollars a year are spent to make sure that any proposed therapy is better than that effect. And that is the placebo effect. And there's an overwhelming mistake that's made when people say, oh, yeah, well, that was just the placebo effect. Excuse me? That was just the body's own ability to heal from a dramatically dangerous condition spontaneously? And you want to dismiss that and not give it further attention? Sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen because you couldn't sell a drug for it? All right? So we have that ability, not just for maintenance, not just for making new skin, making new muscles, making new bones, and so on, but any condition has been shown to, under the appropriate circumstances, to sometimes spontaneously go into remission and to actually heal. So the body has this extraordinary ability to heal. And that's the first premise of BodyTalk. The body has an extraordinary ability to heal. The second sentence, which goes on top of that, which is the principle of BodyTalk, and what we focus on, is that in order for the body to be efficient in its day-to-day healing process, it's got to have all of the communication within the body working. In other words, that the body has to talk to itself, that the brain has to talk to all the body parts. All the body parts have to talk to each other. The body parts have to talk back to the brain. So in a nutshell, what I like to summarize it is, when the body talks to itself, it can heal itself. And it really can be that simple. Okay, that's a simple statement. Most people, when I say that, they're sitting there going, but what about my condition? How does that apply to me? How does that apply to my condition or my loved one's condition or this condition or whatever my concern is? So I will take a bit of time to generalize, to go from that general statement into showing you how this works basically. So, but the first I'll say a little bit about what BodyTalk actually is in terms of a technique. In terms of the technique that we use to restore internal communication within the body. And that allows the internal healing to be efficient. All we use is light hand contacts, not massage, not manipulation, light hand contacts in the body to draw attention to a part of the brain or to a part of the body. And then we use light tapping, and I mean like you would tap on a baby's head, on a newborn's head. It's not a percussive kind of tapping, it's just a very, very light tapping. And light tapping over the head and over the heart. And that's it. That's the technique. And it's actually a simple concept. What seems to be hard for people is to accept that anything could be that simple and still work. And so before I'm through, I'll end up telling you a few stories and I'll explain what's going on there. But basically what we're doing is we're catching the brain's attention over an issue where communication and awareness within the body has broken down. And when that happens, the body's not able to heal itself. And it's really that simple. So the technique for balancing is light hand contacts and light tapping over the brain and over the heart complex to actually stimulate the healing to happen and to stay. The other trick is figuring out where the body needs attention. And that's where this protocol chart comes in. What the BodyTalk system ends up being in a session is that the practitioner will use a light form of biofeedback. We use a very light form of muscle testing is how we teach it in the classes. And not the old school, resist really hard, but just really a very light. Is there a resistance or is there a yielding? To get a yes and no answer from the patient's body, from the client's body. And we follow this protocol to find out, is it an issue with organ communication that needs to be addressed? Is it an issue with endocrine gland communication that needs to be addressed? Is it an issue with brain communication that needs to be addressed? And so on. So it's a methodical protocol of questions that we can go through and find out where communication is broken down in specific in this particular client that is causing their health issues. And once we find that, we touch the body parts that are involved, we do a light tapping, and we move on to see if there's anything else that needs attention. And I mean, it actually is that simple. That's what you do. And the hard thing for a lot of people is to realize it's that easy. I went through quite a struggle when I learned it because I kept wanting to think and to diagnose and to work hard, and because that's what had been my whole professional career had been. It was every time I'd learn a new technique to help people, it was a useful technique. But then pretty soon I had a great big tool bag of techniques. I had lots of different acupuncture skills and approaches and rationales for doing acupuncture. I had lots of different manual therapy skills. I had lots of different massage skills. I had oriental bodywork skills. I had herbology. I had this enormous tool bag. And the first question I had to answer on any given patient was, which tool and where? And actually every time I learned a new tool that actually theoretically increased my effectiveness, in reality it increased my stress level. And because I had to think, and oh my goodness, what do I do now? And at some point I came to the conclusion that I do, unfortunately, what a lot of us practitioners do. You tend to do whatever you learned in the last seminar for until you take the next seminar. And because it's just too hard to weigh out all those choices, basically. Now, I don't have to go through that diagnosis process. I ask, using the biofeedback and this protocol chart, what I should do, including if I'm actually supposed to do one of my other modalities. That's even one of the questions in the protocol chart. So I'm actually able to offer all of my tools within the context of the BodyTalk protocol, which took all the stress rate out of treating. And at the same time, my results went up tremendously. So why would your brain start to forget how to guide the repair process? I mean, that's really the open question. Why would things get in disarray? Why would I had lots of hair when I was in high school, really I did. What happened between then and now to cause the nourishment of my hair follicles on the top of my head to start to get dropped out of the normal circuit of maintenance in my body? So actually I have a little bit more hair now than I did a couple of years ago. It's only a little bit, but at least it's not continuing to disappear. So that's hope anyways. But what would cause that? It certainly wasn't my choice. I liked it when I had hair. I didn't choose this, right? So, and I actually don't think any of my patients choose their disease. I think it happens for another reason. And a word that I've already used, it's stress. It's some kind of stress disrupts communication in the body. So what I want to do to give an idea of how this very simple idea that, oh, if the body forgets something, it's lost internal awareness, all we have to do is touch the body part and tap the brain and tap the heart, and everything switches back on and it works. I mean, that's a nice assertion, but it doesn't quite explain how specific diseases could result from that. I've just said stress is the reason why we get disconnected in the first place. I think the best way for me to explain this model is actually to take the extreme example. You've all heard of the fight or flight response, right? And more of you remember that term from high school than sympathetic nervous system, I bet. So, but we have that. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The first one is the fight or flight, and that's the engagement of the emergency mode of the body. And the nervous system can be in one of two modes. It can be in that emergency response mode, or it can be in normal mode, which is where growth and healing take place. And now that system isn't fully activated all the time, but parts of the body can be, every cell is either in one of those two modes. So part of the body can get stuck into that fight or flight response. So to talk about what happens, because does everybody remember their 10th grade physiology class and what happens with fight or flight nervous system? All right, I'll go over to some of the basics with you. So, and I think that the clearest way, and I got an insight on this a few years ago, is actually I was watching a nature program with my wife at home, and it was on the cheetah, you know, in Africa, the fastest cat, the fastest predator, the fastest animal in the world. And they were documenting how the cheetah can run faster than anything else, but only for about 45 seconds. And so then it's got to give up the chase. So they showed a chase where it stalked through the grass, and there's a gazelle on the edge of the herd that it thinks it can take. And at a certain point, it explodes out of the grass and gives chase. Well, the gazelle, if it notices, runs literally for its life as fast as it can. And it's pretty fast. It's not quite as fast as the cheetah. It's got two things going for it: a head start and the fact that it can run further than the cheetah can. So, but that's not a big advantage. It's got to run for all it's worth. So what was happening right before the cheetah gave chase? It was eating. Relaxing, the sun's out, it's a nice day. It's relaxing. Look, there's grass everywhere. Well, it's not just eating, it's digesting. And that means there's actually a lot of blood circulation to the digestive tract, getting those muscles to work to actually... Have you tried to eat grass? It's a lot of work to break that down and get some nutrition out of it. So a lot of nerve impulses and a lot of blood going to the digestive tract. Now, You've got 45 seconds. The next 45 seconds determine whether or not you can digest this meal or any other meal or not. Is digestion now a priority for you? No. So you need all of the blood and all of the oxygen to the skeletal muscles. So actually part of that fight or flight response is that circulation and nerve impulses to the digestive system shut down to the bare minimum for maintenance. Heart rate goes up 3 times at least. Blood pressure goes up 3 times at least. Why? To get as much oxygen to the legs as possible so that you can run as fast as possible. Actually, you know, we think of the immune system as something that works when you get sick. You get sick when your immune system has gotten behind on the job. Your immune system is supposed to be on duty 24/7. Looking around the body going, you're not from here, are you? Right? So come with me. We get sick when the immune system gets behind and there's an accumulation of foreign invasion and toxic substances. But when you're running from the cheetah, is it important to give resources to the immune system? No. So actually the immune system gets shut down while we're in fight or flight mode. Okay. Now, if, in the case I was watching on TV with my wife, it was a happy ending for the gazelle, not for the cheetah, right? So the cheetah gave up the chase. The gazelle ran 50 or 100 yards past, realized that the cheetah had given up the chase. And what's interesting is what animals do in that case is they go through a little ritual where they actually shake off the fight or flight response. You've probably seen this on a nature program. And they literally shake it off. And they spend just a couple of seconds doing that. And then what? Look, there's food everywhere. And right back to grazing. And the nervous system has gone from fight or flight back to growth and healing completely. Completely. And so life is good. There's blood to the digestive tract. The heart rate falls. The blood pressure falls. The immune system gets turned on again. And life is good. Well, until the next time the cheetah chases you. And, you know, I wish I could take credit for this insight, but it was my wife. She pointed at the TV and she said, that's what we don't do. We don't shake it off. Yeah. We don't turn off our stress. Right? We stay in the stress. Right? So, why do we do that? Well, first off, you know, it's constant. I've got my cell phone in my pocket. I turned it off, right? But I brought it with me just in case somebody called me in the hour before I left the hotel and I got here. You know, I needed to respond to that phone call, or at least I think I do, you know, because I like to think I'm important. And but we all do, don't we, right? So, and I'll check my voicemail after the lecture. So that cell phone goes with me everywhere. I can't get away from it, even though it's all here that I need to take it with me, right? And then I have to check email every day. And you know what? I paid my electric bill last month. They want me to pay it again this month. And the same thing with the mortgage. It just never ends, right? Our lives are busy. And even out here in Missoula, which is a bit smaller place than the last city I was in, which was New York, it's a little bit slower, but you still probably have too much to do in a day, don't you? So here's another thing that we do that I bet the gazelle doesn't, is we think about our stress, right? Now, our large brains are a pretty good adaptive thing. You know, we managed to figure out a lot of things and figure out cell phones and email and cars, and even if they don't self-heal, the cars, you know, well, you know, still they're pretty handy. But we can get ourselves into trouble by thinking about our stress. And I'm betting the gazelle doesn't go, why me? Why did the cheetah have to chase me? And I bet it doesn't spend a lot of time thinking, there ought to be a law. A against predators. Right? You know, we laugh at that because we see ourselves in that, don't we, right? So, you know, our intellectual resourcefulness sometimes can be our worst enemy. Because if the gazelle indulged in that kind of behavior, what would that mean? To the gazelle's nervous system, the cheetah would still be present, and you'd still be in fight or flight. And what happens when you're in fight or flight? Well, your digestive system doesn't work. Tens of millions of Americans have chronic digestive disorders. We're not talking handfuls, we're talking tens of millions. Tens of millions of Americans take blood pressure medication because their blood pressure is too high, which is a natural thing that's supposed to happen when you're in fight or flight response. If you really have to fight or run, your blood pressure should go up. Tens of millions of people have immune system disorders. Whether it's they have low immunity, they have autoimmune diseases, they have chronic allergies, which is really an immune system that's out of balance. Lots and lots of people have heart arrhythmias, which is an overstimulated heartbeat. A lot of people have fast heart rate, tachycardia. All of those things come out of being stuck in fight or flight nervous system. You start to think about that, and it starts to explain health disorders amongst a lot of what ails us, basically. Just that simple, that stress has distorted our system, our nervous system. But you know, another way to think about that is that effectively what happens is that when you go into that stress response, the brain stops paying attention to certain systems and starts paying attention to only the emergency response systems. And so basically that's a communication shift. That's an internal, now it's subconscious, I grant you, but it's an internal shift of awareness within the mind. And you know, most people want to heal if you can increase their internal awareness of what needs to happen. I mean, here's an analogy. I actually don't have a problem with taking money from people, but I don't have a neat desk. And I hired an assistant recently, and she started going through my files and putting them in order and looking underneath things on the desk, and she kept finding things like, oh, now there's a check here. Did you want to deposit that? Yes. Why didn't you? 'Cause I forgot. You know, you forget about it and you can't deal with it anymore. Out of sight, out of mind. And effectively what happens is when we get into a stress response, and based on our constitutional type, what our strengths and weaknesses are genetically from our parents, how we respond to different kinds of stress is going to affect us in different parts of the body. But it is stress that causes that. Even some of you who are thinking, well, what about birth defects? That's not stress. Many scientists would beg to differ with you. It's actually been shown quite conclusively that if either of the parents experience emotional stress during pregnancy, the child is exposed to that emotional stress. And depending on the stage of gestation in the womb, that part of the development may be challenged. And some scientists go far to say that 95% of birth defects happen not at conception, but during the pregnancy. And it's a stress response. It's still a stress response. The good news is this idea of, hey brain, would you like to cash that check? Right? Or would you like to actually have a look at the liver? Or would you actually like to see if you can get the liver and the pancreas to communicate again? I think you'd be happier. And that simple approach to finding out where, essentially, the brain has stuffed some checks under old magazines and so on, and forgotten to do its job, is that once we highlight the issue to the nervous system through the protocol chart and the light hand positions and the tapping, the healing happens. and we have to do virtually nothing else. And this has been my experience. Last year I used 5 needles in my practice. Not 5 needles per patient, but 5 needles. And this year I hadn't used any until last month, when a dear friend of mine begged me to do acupuncture on her so that she could experience the style of acupuncture that I had studied from a particular master. And but that's why I did it, not because I felt she needed it. She just was curious as an acupuncture physician. Other than that, I haven't used any needles this year, and my results have been simply miraculous. So that's really the idea with the theory of it. You know, I mean, that's about as much theory as I really need to give you. What I'd like to do is actually just give you a couple of specific case examples to round out your understanding of that, because this is still fairly theoretical. And then I would actually like to do a short demonstration. And I will make time for questions and answers after that, but I find actually if I actually do a demonstration, it helps to answer a number of the questions, and then we move on to, you know, the questions that haven't really been answered. So I didn't prepare a list of stories. I've got so many, I'm just trying to pick one here. So actually, before I get into a story, one of the things I mentioned that we have 2 levels of entry into learning BodyTalk, and one we call the Access Program. And the idea is that we originally started teaching BodyTalk as the core system is 2 classes that we usually teach together as a 4-day seminar. And that gives actually most of that protocol chart. It gives quite a lot of choices. And it's a wonderful system, and we actually allow people to, if they've taken that course and taken the course again, because it's a lot of information, and done some practices, and do an actual exam with an instructor, both written and practical, we'll actually allow them to be listed on the website as a certified practitioner, because we think what's covered in those 4 days, if you learn it well, will actually be enough to give you a fairly good practice and get results with a wide range of conditions. But after a while, we realized that there was a lot of people who could benefit from this, who it wasn't appropriate for them to take a 4-day seminar and invest that much of their time and their money in something when they didn't intend to be practitioners. They just wanted to be able to help their family. And so we came up with a 1-day course, which is just a handful of the techniques without learning the muscle testing. But it's a handful of the really general techniques that basically everybody could benefit from. And we teach a program there where the idea is that you just do those techniques, a core set of techniques that take about 4 minutes to do several days a week. And we've been teaching this program for about a year, and I've gotten so much feedback from people that it's helped their health, but particularly from parents who have found that if they do those techniques, even though they're not necessarily exactly what this person or this person needs, they help to reset that communication within the brain and reset the nervous system back to the growth and healing enough where they experience dramatic results. And especially with the parents who have kids who have learning disorders, that just doing those techniques make an enormous difference in the ability of the children to actually cope, both with their actual schoolwork, but then to cope emotionally. Because I've rarely met a kid with learning disorders who wasn't extremely frustrated by it. And so then they have sociability problems, not because they're by nature angry people, but because they're frustrated. And to be able to give a 1-day class that gives parents something they can actually do in a few minutes has just been really wonderful to share. So now that technique, one of the techniques we teach in there is something we call cortices, and it's short for just balancing the right and left cortexes of the brain. The brain is divided into 2 major halves, and it would be lovely if they actually talked together. But a lot of times the communication between the 2 halves of the brain is actually compromised. It's working, but it's not working at high efficiency. And effectively when that's happening, you're thinking with half a brain at a time, and you're not thinking well. And that's actually a huge factor in many learning disorders. So it's the first technique we teach in this one-day class, but it's also one of the techniques we teach in the 4-day class, which is what I took first about 6 years ago. And I was using the whole system in my practice and getting good results when, after about 2 months, I had an opportunity to meet up with an old friend of mine who'd worked for me as an engineer some years before on the mainland. And it turned out that his daughter was autistic, and she was about 3.5 years old, and she'd been diagnosed not severely autistic, but pretty definite diagnosis, and she was withdrawn and not antisocial, but certainly asocial. She, at 3.5, she still had no verbal skills, she still had no language, and no sociability. And she didn't have the actual self-destructive tendencies that some kids get with the severe autism, but there was basically nobody home. And I had no idea what BodyTalk could do, and I was trying to give them advice over the phone of things that they might try, and I could just tell this was just too far out of their world. They'd been to their general practitioner, who basically didn't have a program for them. And so what they had accepted was that, no, you just learn to live with this autistic child, and that's it. And so I had actually been getting such phenomenal results with this system that after about a month, I decided I needed to fly from Hawaii to Florida to meet Dr. Veltheim, who's the actual founder of the system. And he developed it in the mid to late 90s. And because I was fascinated by what was going on with me. And so on my way back, I had a layover in their city for 2 hours. And that was back when you could meet people in the airport. Remember those days, you know? Yeah, I miss those days. So anyways, I said, hey, meet me in the airport. A, I haven't seen you for a long time. B, I might be able to help. No, I can't really explain it, but I might be able to. I promise you I won't hurt her, you know, because this is what I'm going to do, right? So, and he asked how it works, and at that point I hadn't got it figured out. So I just fed one of his own lines back to him because he was an electrical engineer, and I said, any technology that's sufficiently advanced to be useful is indistinguishable from magic to the layperson. He told me that when I asked how electricity actually worked, and because we don't know, actually. So we don't know how your computer works, we can just make them, right? So, and so anyways, I showed up in San Francisco airport and gave my friend a hug, and, you know, gave his wife a hug. And this little girl, 3.5, was just standing there, and she was not shy. There was nobody home. Her eyes were absolutely expressionless, just flat, dull, no shine, no sparkle, nobody home. She was just standing there like this. And I actually knelt down to wave at her, see if I could get her attention. I was just looking to see if she'd even avert her eyes or look away, you know. Some response, absolutely nothing, just nothing. And so I talked to my friend for a few minutes, and I had, you know, when we follow the whole protocol, we might do 1 balancing, we might do 20. So I never know how long it's going to take, because we just keep asking the body, is there more to do today? Is there more to do today? Is there more to do today? Every time we tap something out. So I said, well, gosh, will she sit in your lap? Yep. You think she'll let me touch her? Yeah, she's pretty passive, you know. She won't reach back, but she'll probably let you touch her. So I was able to actually test her directly and get my yes and my no. And it took me right to, with just a few questions, it took me right to doing this cortices balancing. And, you know, and that took a couple of minutes. So, and it's just spanning a hand on the back of the head to bridge the back, the left and right side of the back of the brain, and then doing the tapping. And then moving the hand and tapping some more, and moving the hand and tapping some more. And when it got to the sides of the head, I knew she wasn't going to cooperate, so I got her dad to hold both sides of her head, and I did the tapping. And while I was doing it, I thought that that I saw some shine come into her eyes. You know, and I kind of talked myself out of it because I thought that was maybe wishful thinking that 2 minutes of therapy could actually make a change, right? So, but then that was it. I'm asking, okay, any more to balance? No. Really? Yeah. And I'm trying to explain to this little 3.5-year-old autistic girl, so I get on the plane, fly 2,500 miles away. This is it. Any more? No. That was it. 2 minutes that it took to tap this out. 2.5 minutes, maybe. So just connecting the left and right side of the brain. That was it. And so I explained that that was it. And, well, let's talk now. Well, 20 minutes later, they called my flight, and I had to get back on the plane. And so I gave my friend a hug, and I gave my wife a hug, and I knelt down to give the little girl a wave. I wasn't expecting a hug. I just waved at her. And she looked up, and she came over, and she hugged me. And her parents were dumbfounded. She's never hugged us. That was her first hug. Now, admittedly, I'm an eminently huggable person. But this little girl wasn't able to recognize my eminent huggability 20 minutes before. And so I actually was crying at the time, as you might. I'm close to it now, actually, because that's why I'm lecturing around the world teaching, is that's the kind of results I see with this work. So that was a dramatic change. You know what? It gets better. The next day I was home in Hawaii. I got an email from the mom, and she said that she asked the little girl, "Do you remember meeting Dr. Kaimi in the airport last night?" And the little girl looked up and went, and they came for a visit to Hawaii about 8 months later, and rented a condo down in Kona and had their vacation. And one day they came up to see our house. And they came in, and the little girl went over to, my wife had a hat sitting on a chair or something. And the little girl went over and picked up the hat and put it on. And said, "See my hat?" Which is not actually typical autistic behavior. So, now that was all the body talk she had was that one session for 2 minutes. And she had an immediate, dramatic, permanent shift in sociability and language skills. And you know what? I thought, well, that was just like something that was just too amazing. It was just a fluke. And I actually put that story on our members' website, where we have a forum where we share questions and stories and so on to find out what other people are doing with body talk around the world. And a number of people posted to say, yeah, me too. I had an autism case come good after just doing cortices. And where it was, maybe not a full, balancing, but where it was a dramatic shift from doing that. And of course now I've read that they're starting to look at, according to one magazine article I read, they're starting to look at autism as a severe form of male intelligence. And by which they mean that the left cortex, which is much more masculine, much less, much more linear and organizing and categorizing, is not being in communication with the right side, which is more social. And that actually describes a lot of autism, actually. And so actually just balancing the two sides of the brain makes a lot of sense in, some of the theories behind autism. So now, I'll admit some cases are much harder than that, but it's amazing that a difficult case, that had been, where there had been no prognosis of any hope, responded to such a simple balancing. So. Now, that wasn't the only story. I mean, I had literally 100 great stories in those first couple of months. That's why I got on the plane to go meet, Dr. Veltheim. And one of them was that the day after the class, my wife, who had had a problem right about here in the thoracic spine, where there was a vertebra that just kept going out. And this has been going on for 20 years. And she would get a chiropractic adjustment every week. And great. That'd last for 2 or 3 days. And then that stiffness and tension would come back and the vertebra had pulled back out. And then she started getting acupuncture. And the acupuncture physician actually trained me before I went to acupuncture school, would do some acupuncture around it and then do an adjustment. And that would stay sometimes for 5 days, but it would still have to be adjusted every week. And then I started studying acupuncture, but I also started studying some osteopathic skills in seminars and so on. And once I got it to stay for 8 days, and I was thinking, man, I'm pretty good, right? But it kept going back, and this has just been going on for 20 years. Well, the first day after the BodyTalk class, and what's interesting, with a lot of new skills that you learn, it takes months before you get decent at them. You have to practice and get sensitive and so on. I was using this the day after the class and getting great results because it was that simple. And yeah, I have gotten better at it since actually, but I was able to get results right after. So I did a session on my wife the day after the class. And actually the protocol took me to the spine and to more specific and right to T3, that vertebra that kept going out on her, and it linked to something else in her body. And I had my hand under her back and tapped, and I felt all this release of heat into my hand. And it actually felt like, that little part of the spine that sticks straight back, the spinous process of it that sticks straight back, it actually felt like something went in my hand. And I thought, well, now that couldn't happen, because I didn't force it, right? So, but actually one of the osteopaths I studied with said, hey, most of the time the bone doesn't make any noise on its way out. Why should it make noise on its way in, right? Okay, So I said, honey, I think that just shifted. And she says, yeah, I felt something. And I turned her over and I palpated her spine, and sure enough, it was in alignment. And that was 6 years ago, 6 years and 2 weeks ago. And I hope particle board with veneer counts, but it's still good, right? So, and that was the kind of result I was getting, with chronic conditions that had not been untreated. She'd been to see the best practitioners she knew of, and I'd studied with the best practitioners I knew of so I could get better. And it was when I learned this work that it actually changed. So, and I've had cases of allergies where people have been getting allergy treatment for a long time of this kind or that kind, and 1 or 2 sessions, and they just come good. And now they can eat tomatoes. I mean, or strawberries or whatever it is. And where they've been working at that for years, and really often with just 1 session, sometimes with 2, they were actually able to enjoy life. And because really, isn't a lot of allergies, doesn't it, since a lot of them change over time, doesn't it make sense to look at them as the immune system sort of gotten confused? And all we have to really say is, look, it's a tomato, it's food, it's not a tiger, and to calm down. So, because so many things we consider hard, like allergies, actually do change. I had terrible allergies when I was a kid. Lots and lots of hay fever, lots of food allergies too, but lots of hay fever. Most of the year my nose was running, I had to sleep propped up, and the whole stuff. And it cleared up when I moved out of home. Didn't move very far away. It turned out I was allergic to my parents. So, and I hope my mom's not going to watch this. This is getting taped for TV over here. So with that, what I'd like to do? I've been talking for like 45 minutes or more now. That's the theory of it, basically. It's really simple. The body's supposed to heal itself. It normally does. until communication within the body gets redirected because of stress. And if we stay in the stress long enough, then the system, the brain, forgets how to switch back. And the BodyTalk system itself is both general techniques to try to turn this rheostat on the nervous system from emergency mode back to growth and healing. And it's got the ability to be very specific and say, okay, you're mostly doing fine, nervous system, but you forgot about this part of the body, or you forgot about this part of the body, or you forgot to be able to get these two parts of the body to actually work in synchrony. And that's the idea behind it. It's actually gives total respect to the idea that the body is actually fairly well designed, and it does a good job of healing itself when you give it a chance. So with that, what I want to do is I'd like to do a short little demonstration to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, how easy it is to do, and what the results are. And you know what I'd like to do is I'd like it to be somebody that I feel like I might be able to demonstrate a change by being able to do a little bit of evaluation of like range of motion. So really I'm looking for somebody who has got some sort of structural restriction, of like stiff neck or shoulder problem or something like that, and so that I could actually, we can do a before and after kind of thing. So I see a couple of hands going up. Okay. You were one of the first people to raise your hand over here with the glasses, and yeah, the green, yeah. Why don't you come on up? So, what's your name? Pamela. Okay. And now, go ahead and turn your neck from all the way to one side. I just want to see how far it moves. Okay, that's fairly restricted. Turn the other way for me. That's about it, huh? That's pretty restricted. Yes. Okay. And is it pain there or just limitation? Okay. And numbness and tingling. Oh, okay. Well, better you than me. No, I'm kidding. All right. So, now how about tilting your head down towards your chest? Can you do that? Okay, that's fairly restricted as well. You should be able to touch your chin to your chest. Can you, without causing yourself pain, can you look up? Not very well. You're actually supposed to be able to put your head back to where you can rest a tray on your forehead, right? So, okay, so you do have quite a restricted neck. Yeah. And you said shoulder too?
Yeah.
All right. Let me just do a little evaluation on your shoulder myself. And so just relax your arm. I just want to see where the restriction is. That's about it, really. I could force her arm up, but I would be hurting her. And I actually, in spite of my callous comment, better you than me, I really don't want to hurt you, right? So that was a joke, right? Let me just check range of motion this way. And that's about it, really. I could force it, but I'm getting quite a bit of restriction right there. So, it is supposed to be able to go up like that, right? So that is quite restricted. So it's not just the neck, right? Let me check the other side. Relax, okay. Let me have the arm, there we go. That's pretty restricted. Again, I could force it further, but I feel quite a lot of restriction right there. That is about the extent of her natural range of motion. Again, relax. And not even the 90 degrees here. So there is actually quite a lot of restriction there. Okay, well, you are an excellent candidate. I sure, and you seem like a nice person too.
I am.
Okay. I didn't expect her to argue with that one, right? So, all right, so what I want to do first is I talked about that one-day course, which is the Access program. We teach that as a way that although we feel the best results are when you follow that protocol chart and you do exactly what the body wants in exactly the order, because some things have to happen first. The body has its own system of prerequisites. Well, no, we can't really address that until this has been addressed. The techniques we teach in that Access program, although they may not be sufficient, they actually help a lot of things. They're good general techniques. And the analogy sometimes I like to use is that I'm not a sailor. I like the water, and I like to paddle, and I paddle canoe and kayak and so on. But I'm not a sailor, so you don't have to know knots to paddle a kayak, right? So a good friend of mine is a sailor, and every once in a while he takes me out on his sailing canoe, and he'll want me to tie something off, right? Tie that sheet, which they mean rope. I don't get that, right? So tie that off to there, and then he'll throw out some name of a knot, you know, like bowling, like I'm supposed to know, right? And I give him that, huh? You know, kind of real good blank stare, and he says, oh, right, okay. If you can't tie a good knot, tie a lot of knots, right? Because you're bound to get it to hold after a while, right? So that's actually kind of what the Access program is we know it's not perfect, but it's really beneficial. So we say, hey, it doesn't take very long, and it's easy to do, so do it fairly often, and it will have good benefits. So I actually want to just do those techniques first, because they only take a couple of minutes to do. And I want to reevaluate and see if there's any change. And then I want to go into asking her body using the protocol chart and see what else comes up and see, you know, which does what. I think that'll make it interesting, right? So, okay. So the first one is what I just talked about that I did on the little girl, the cortices balancing. Now don't worry, if you're not autistic, it doesn't make you autistic. It's not like it's not a toggle switch or anything. It helps. It helps everybody. We really feel this is one of the single most beneficial techniques.
I'd like to know how to do math.
There we go. Yeah, to actually switch the nervous system back out of that fight or flight response into growth and healing in a general way. So all I do is I put my hand on the back of her head, and I'm focusing towards, you know, balancing the brain, and I tap lightly. That doesn't hurt too bad, does it?
No.
Yeah. It's really light, you know. I mean, it's literally, you would not feel any reservations about tapping an infant's head at this level. It's quite light, so. And then I move my hand to get the next part of the brain. And that's all it is. I'm getting the left and right side of the brain to balance to each other, making this suggestion by placing my hand there and drawing the brain's attention, and tapping the brain a little bit and tapping over the heart a little bit. Tapping the heart just seems to make the changes last better. It gets the cooperation between the brain and the heart to work better, which has actually been a principle that's been noted in Chinese medicine for some thousands of years. But now with the heart math research and the research into neurocardiology, they're showing actually really is a phenomenon that the heart energy field influences brain function. So we found in practice, in clinical practice, that when we added the tapping over the heart, the changes seem to be deeper and last than when we just tapped over the head. You know, the last thing is I want to get the signs of the brain. So would you put a hand on the side of your head about like that? I'll get the other side like this. Humans have these large brains. You have to use a lot of hand positions, you know. If I do this to a dog, I just once, you know. But, you know, humans, they got those large brains. You got to do several hand positions. So. I still like humans, so, yeah. Okay. Well, that didn't hurt too bad, did it?
No.
All right. The next one is a technique we call switching, and it helps to just switch the brain back on if it's gotten switched off due to stress. We do have a switching reflex that tells us that we're working too hard or, you know, that we need to take a break. Sometimes we stay switched off. That's a problem. Actually, for this, would you take your glasses off? And I want you to just take 2 fingers and just press lightly on your eyes. And I'm just going to stimulate this spot right here, right below the collarbone. Okay, that didn't hurt too bad, did it? All right. So the next thing is a technique we use to help the body balance water movement in the body. And we call it hydration. And you know what's interesting is that a lot of people aren't dehydrated everywhere. They may have edema in their legs and dry mouth. You know, that the water isn't moving in the body correctly. And so this technique, actually what we do is we get the whole brain to focus on water by putting a little bit of water on the skin. And the best place that seems to catch the brain's attention the most is actually right around the navel. Could you just put this under your shirt and just put it on your navel? There we go. So, you know, it's just, putting it on the skin actually seems to catch the brain's attention. And the navel, we found through clinical practice, seems to catch the brain's attention more. And some theories on that, but we're not exactly sure. But in practice, it works. So we do it. So then put your hands on the side of the head. You just shove it into your belt buckle or something like that so it stays. Both hands on the side of the head. We're going to do something like that cortices. I'm going to get our whole brain to focus on water by doing but with a special emphasis on the sides of the head, because that seems to get involved with some of the factors involved with both immunity and hydration in the body, of balancing the movement between, does the water get into tissues, does the water get out of tissues? For those of you technically minded people, it helps to balance intracellular and extracellular fluid balance, all right? Basically, does the water get to where it needs to go in the body? So. Okay, you can relax your hands. Go ahead and take that thing out of your navel. All right. Now, one more thing that's going to look quite similar, and this is that we found that most people, their immune system is out of balance. And I talked about that with the whole fight or flight nervous response, right? When you go into emergency mode, it actually takes resources away from and distorts the functioning immune system. So we have a technique that we call body chemistry that actually helps to rebalance the immune system. Now, to do that, to get a representation of the internal body chemistry, you know, older systems used blood and other body fluids. We found that saliva works really good. So if you could just moisten that with a little bit of saliva and put it back on your navel. And you know, it's amazing how much information is in the saliva. Now we have all these crime scene shows. You know, they take a cheek swab and they put the guy at the scene of crime. It does have the information about what's going on inside you. And somehow putting that on the surface of the body, on the skin, helps the brain focus on the internal factors. In clinical practice, this technique works brilliantly to balance the immune system. So, all right, so you got it near your navel there?
Yeah, it's
great.
Not like dripping or anything.
No, that's fine. Just a little moist is good enough. Yeah, we don't have to, you know, hawk it up or anything like that, right? So, I didn't really say that. This isn't being taped, is it? Right, so, okay. I find people learn better if I make them laugh, right? That was my excuse, right? So again, it's to get the whole brain to focus on the immune system this time. Instead of just water in her navel, we've got a representation of her internal body chemistry, which does represent the balance of her immune function, is right there in the saliva. So, and we're just getting the whole brain with a special emphasis on actually on the limbic part of the brain, which is where a lot of the immune processing happens, which is why I've got our hands on the side. And that's just a pre-programmed part of this. We teach it this way in the class and talk a bit more about what it does. Okay. Okay. And you can go ahead and take that thing out of your navel now. And I'll just put this, there we go, over here. All right. So there's a little bit more in that one-day class, but those 4 core techniques are the ones that we say, hey, do those as a unit. It balances the brain, it switches the brain back on, it balances water movement, seems to balance the immune system. That helps to undo a lot of stress in the body. So we say do that a few times a week, be great. Let's just see if it made any change. Turn your head to the right, turn back towards me. Okay, not a big change there. Does it feel any different?
Feels
A little bit
more
easier.
relaxed, yeah.
It looks like it moves a little easier,
Yeah.
and maybe just a smidge further, okay? Now, chin to the chest. Okay, that's still terrible. All right, so, no, don't worry. And head up. Yeah, about the same. All right. Let me check and see if there's any been release in the shoulder here yet. So let me have your arm. There we go. That's about the same there. All right. And about the same there. All right. So, that's actually a little bit better on this side. This wouldn't go to 90. It was like a little bit more like down here. And I've picked up about 5 or 10 degrees there. Probably more like a good 10 degrees. On the side, I actually could only I couldn't get close to 90. And now it goes up to not quite 90. It starts to get pretty restricted there. So it's a slight release, you know? But a little bit more ease in the neck, even though it's not a great range of motion. Go ahead and turn again, side to side. Yeah. Okay. See a little bit range of motion, but it's a little bit, sense of ease is a little bit different. How do you feel? Calmer?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that people find right away is like, wow, is it possible I could feel calmer after that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the whole point of it, actually. So, All right, so with
I
that,
also had a pretty extreme headache when I came out for this lesson.
oh, you had a strong headache, and that's lesson 2. Okay. So with that, actually, why don't you lay down with your head on this pillow here, and I'll just put your glasses over here so we don't step on them or something. So, and I want to actually then do the protocol using the muscle testing and see, those were general techniques. Nothing was specifically targeting her neck or her shoulder. It was just to say, hey, if we turn the system away from fight or flight back into growth and healing, will it make you feel somewhat better, right? And it has, it's not fixed yet, but that was a very general technique. So, are you comfortable like that? Is that good?
It's hard for me to keep my legs down.
Okay, would you rather have this under your legs or?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Does that help a little bit?
No.
Okay, good, all right. All right, so the muscle testing is, I'm not going to show you exactly how we learn it and everything, but it's very light. I don't make a big movement. I actually just pull with one finger to see if I'm getting a little resistance or a little yielding. And in practice, we find that practitioners get more accurate results and better results if they actually go fairly subtle with it rather than fairly large. And so I'm not going to try to make it so that you can see every answer here. I'm just going to reach underneath and do this. But then let me just make sure I can get yes. I can get no, and I can get yes. So it was a small change, but it was there. You probably felt that little difference there. No? Okay.
Paying attention.
Oh, that's all right. Your job is just to lay there. So, all right. So I just started. I start at the top of the chart. Is the permissions a priority? No. Is section 1 a priority? Yes. I'm actually just going to do the techniques that are on there that are in the first 4-day class to keep it simple. All right. So is it EGB? No. Organs a priority? No. Endocrines a priority? Yes. Specific endocrine gland? Yes. All right. The pineal gland, the pituitary, the thyroid, the thymus, the pancreas. So fairly efficient protocol. I've already got to that addressing communication with the pancreas is a priority. Pancreas and what is my next question, basically. All right. So further details about the pancreas? No. Is there a link? Is there a link? Yes. Within the pancreas, within the endocrines, within section 1 there? Yes. More specific? Yes. All right. Is it EGB? Is it organs? So actually, even though the first thing was in endocrines, the next thing is actually in organs. So, all right, specific organ? Yes, the lungs, the heart, the liver, gallbladder, stomach, spleen, small intestine, large intestine, bladder, kidneys. All right. Both kidneys? No. The one on my side, the one on their side. I always get confused with right and left, so I try to keep it simple. So the pancreas to that kidney, okay? Yeah. Is there any more communication links that need to be repaired with the pancreas here and the pancreas to kidneys? No. All right. Can I tap out? Yes. That's it. That's all the information I needed. Would you just slide a hand under, palm down is fine, but under your back right here about the level of the kidney? Yeah. That's good. I'll just hold here because the pancreas is under here somewhere. So we're just getting her brain to focus on getting communication and cooperation between the pancreas and I think that's the left kidney to work. And I hold here, and I type lightly over the head, and lightly over the heart. And typically with these balancings, I usually tap for 2 or 3 breath cycles, and that's about it. And then I check just to make sure that I tapped long enough. So further balancing? No. Okay? So you can relax your hand there. Okay, so are we still balancing the pancreas? It might need to talk to something else, so I just pick up where I left off. No. Further balancing in the endocrines at this time? No. Is there still a priority in section 1? Yes. Specific? Yes. EGB, organs, endocrines. Now it's body parts. Specific body part? Yes. In the brain? Yes. Okay. Specific in the brain? Yes. Reptilian brain, limbic brain, cortex? Yes. All right. So details on that? Yes. Both sides? No. My side, their side. So left cortex, details, specific, frontal lobe. All right. More specific? No. So you see how few questions it actually takes me to get there? It's actually a really efficient protocol. I've got to her left frontal cortex of the brain. Needs better communication with something. Even though we did the cortices balancing, it means communication maybe with something else, all right? So further details on that? No. Does it link to something? Yes. Within the left cortex, within the brain, within body parts? No. Within that first section? Yes. Specific EGB organs? Yes. Specific organ? Yes. Lungs, heart, liver, gallbladder, stomach. So the left frontal cortex to the stomach. Good thing I didn't have to figure this out through like diagnosis, right? So, and that's what I'm thinking right now. Is there any more information I need to know about why we're balancing that? No. Are there any more links at all to that? No. Can I just tap it out? Yeah. There, put your hand right there. Now it means stomach instead of pancreas. I'll hold here for left frontal cortex. So left frontal cortex to the stomach. So that's what we're holding. And that's what I'm asking her brain to focus on as I tap them. So. You know, we've actually done EEG studies that if you've asked the body what it wants to be held when you do that tapping, the brain lights up with activity. If you just hold random areas and don't ask, the brain doesn't do anything when you do the tapping. It's not the tapping per se, it catches the brain's attention. And if what you're holding is already good, it goes, so. But if it's really that, like my analogy of my assistant showing me the check I buried under the magazine, it goes, oh my goodness, yes, I'll look at that. And but actually we do see clinically dramatic changes in brain activity when we've done the question asking and are linking what the body seems to need attention on. So, all right. So is that balancing still a priority? I tap for 2 or 3 breath cycles, but I always check in to see if we tapped long enough, right? And that's part of what we teach. So. Is this part of the brain still a priority? No. Is the brain still a priority? No. Body part still a priority? No. Is there still that top section? No. Is there a priority forward? Yep. To section 2, to 4, specific, body chemistry, active memory, cellular repair, lymph circulation. So, specific circulation, blood, nerve. Affecting an organ, affecting an endocrine, affecting another body part, yes. Specific body part, brain, head, neck. So nerve supply to the neck. And more specific in the neck? No. Okay, is it nerves to? Is it nerves from? Is it nerves within? So nerve supply within the neck itself. Just to get the brain to balance nerve function within the neck. Yeah. Any other links? No? Tap it out? Yeah. Okay. Why don't you put a hand under your neck? And I'll hold here because I think that's where the brain is. So, and yeah, I went to school actually, so. But this is just to balance nerve supply. The brain is a controller of the nervous supply, right? To actual nerve supply within the neck itself. So. Now I have actually memorized that protocol chart, so it's a little bit easier for me to do it than somebody who's just learned it that day. But it's actually, I mean, you kind of heard the questions. It's not actually like rocket science either, is it? So it's actually quite simple. And the tapping is not hard work. I'm trying to make it look like hard work so I appear special, but all right. Go ahead and relax. There we go. All right. Is that balancing still a priority? No. Is the nerve supply still a priority? No. Is the circulation still a priority? No. That bottom section still a priority? No. Is there a priority forward? No. Is there a priority backward? No. Does that mean end of session for now? Yeah. End of session. Yeah. Okay. That didn't hurt too bad, did it? No. Okay. It was kind of relaxing?
Yeah.
You got to lay down. There you
did.
go. Yeah. Go ahead and sit up for me. And swing your legs off the table and face them again. All right. So, go ahead and, okay. Everybody's looking at you. It's okay. Yeah. Go ahead and turn your head. So, that actually looks a little further to me. How does it feel?
Yeah, feels further.
Yeah. That's further.
That's further.
Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's further and it's better. It looks easier too.
Feels springier. Yeah.
Feels springier. How about chin to the chest? Let's see that. That's a little closer. Yeah, it's still not there, but it's closer. How about head up? That's better. All right, it's not good, but it's better. All right, so that's progress in what? What did that take? 5 minutes? Something like that? All right, relax your arm. Okay, not much help there yet. Not much help there. A little bit maybe, but you know. All right. It's going up easier. I can't say it's going a lot further than it was over the basic techniques, right? So not as much pain when I do that. Yeah, because I was taking it really to where there was a definite restriction and it was actually hurting her a little bit before. I want to make sure I had a clear, firm restriction before, and that's a little bit better. It goes easier. Her arm feels less restricted, even though the range of motion isn't categorically better, right? But this arm was really heavy to try to pick up to there, and it has gone from about here to about there, and from about here to yeah, it's still need help on this shoulder, but the neck's starting to be a little bit better. How's your headache?
It's better.
It's better?
Yeah.
Okay.
This has been about a 6-month thing anyway. It's been,
Okay.
so it's not like,
So this is long term.
yeah.
And have you just ignored it, or have you been seeing people for it?
A little of both.
A little both. Okay.
But like you said, it's like, who do you go to? Do you go to acupuncture? Do you go to chiropractor?
Yeah.
What do you do? So,
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for
thank you.
being our guinea pig. So. Okay. Well, you see how easy it is to do. Now, you know, we've got a little time. I'm here. Do you have any questions? Anybody?
What about eyesight and bunions?
Eyesight and bunions. That's technically 2 questions. All right. So. Yes, it can work with eyesight, and you know, now one of the interesting things with eyesight, there's so many factors involved. I've had results both personally. I'm still wearing contacts, but they're much weaker than they used to be. And I actually had to get them replaced earlier this year because the old ones were getting to be way too strong for me. And it was a bit disorienting. So when I finally went to the optometrist and said, you know, check me out on this, he actually reduced the power on my prescription by nearly a full diopter, right? Which was significant. You know, it was about a 30% increase in improvement. So bunions is possible to work with, and I haven't worked with a great many cases, but I've seen a number where they've become at least more comfortable. Reversing the bone growth, you know, is kind of a long stage thing, and but the comfort level I've seen actually improve quite a bit. So yeah.
Can you work on yourself?
Yeah, can you work on yourself? Yes, although it's really not the primary intention for the system. Is that we find that working on yourself works really well for the access techniques, which are they're kind of like the fast aid general response. That when people do those on themselves, they do very, very well. And I had a case personally where I broke my ankle a few years ago, and I did those techniques to myself, the cortices and holding the ankle while doing cortices and so on. And it actually made it so the pain go down dramatically in just a few minutes. And then I hobbled over to the car, and fortunately I had an automatic at that point, and I drove over to a practitioner's place and got a full session, and that helped a great deal more. Actually, one of my one of my trainees in Ohio was showing me that she actually sprained her ankle in the garden earlier this year and went down and could not stand on it. It actually instantly turned all blue and purple and all kinds of crazy colors. And she just did the cortices balancing on herself for several minutes, like 5 minutes, and she was actually able to get up and walk on it. So where before it would have been, you know, put ice on it and hobble for a week, basically. What we find, though, is with some of the deeper things, is that the yes and no, we're the first to admit that it's not infallible. And so we do not teach our practitioners, in fact, we prohibit in our standards of practice, that anybody should diagnose using the yes and no, because you can always pull harder if you really need to get an answer. And so the protocol chart itself is designed to be fairly neutral, and so that practitioners can be fairly, hopefully clear on just being really open to whatever answer comes. People are much less able to be clear about themselves. Our pet diagnoses about what's going on with ourselves are much stronger than with other people, and in practice people tend not to get nearly as good of results working on themselves as they do others. And so it can, and I certainly do it in a pinch, but it's not the primary purpose. Yeah. The gentleman here?
Very interesting. I would tend to disagree with you on this last point about the treating oneself. There's a lot of dynamics to this, but have you heard of the Tao of internal healing arts?
Yes, I have.
This is the power of mind, where ideas and thoughts are real. They manifest physically and internally as well. And the word attention, you use the word attention, which is very good, plus the two hemispheres. But this turning attention to things and thoughts being real, you can direct this sort of internal healing energy to these different organs. So this is an old knowledge.
It is, and I agree with you to a point, and I'm certainly aware, as an acupuncture physician, I'm certainly have studied Taoist internal healing practice and so on. And yet, one of the very, very strong principles of internal Qigong amongst the Taoist principles is it is not for beginners to attempt alone. You do not do it without supervision until you get to a certain stage, because it requires that you're already fairly clear in mind and body before you can do those exercises powerfully on yourself. Until then, you need assistance. And so, ideally, the furthest you can go with health must come from meditation, and that is a well-honored tradition. But when somebody is ill and needs that their mind and body is not clear, they really need outside assistance. Once they have gotten to a certain level of health, then I would say the self-meditation, the self-awareness, the self-focus is the next stage. But it's, in most cases, it's not the first step towards healing when somebody's ill. They need to get some outside assistance. There's always exceptions. So
there's exceptions, but once a person is ill and really needs outside help, yes, this is very good.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's no other path but internal, one's mind.
Ultimately. And yet, you know, giving the advice of just turn your attention in and heal yourself would not have helped that autistic girl. And so it is for a stage of healing, and classically in Chinese medicine principles, meditation is the highest form of Chinese medicine. I agree, but it is not a remedial form, typically. And so that was what I was speaking to. So, over here.
What about, say, artificial joints or someone who has had a body part removed? How do you get your body to remember, or does it just automatically remember to heal itself?
Actually, that is something where BodyTalk works quite well, is not just with joint replacement, but with any kind of surgery that you know, in certain cases, even with BodyTalk, you know, if it's been going on for a long time and they're seriously ill, they may need to get surgery. And because it's just too far gone to really expect the body to heal and fast enough to do that. But what we find is, and we do have a number of surgeons now doing BodyTalk or having a BodyTalker that they work with, is that when they do need the surgery, it helps people to recover much faster. Their recovery period is dramatically faster, and the complications are faster. And I had a case recently where somebody did have a hip replacement, and it actually came up in the session to balance certain areas of the rest of her body to the artificial hip, so that essentially the posture and the nervous system could adapt to the fact that there has been a change. And she reported just an immediate relief in the amount of back pain and the mobility around the pelvis and the hip from doing that. And because, yes, when the body has had a prosthesis or an artificial joint replacement, getting the rest of the body to understand what's happened and to recruit the brain to really make all of the fine adjustments so that you can adapt as best as possible is a boon, actually. So.
What's been your observations about the will of the patient to heal?
Whether it's acupuncture or herbs or medicine or manipulation or anything, is the person's capacity for change, and which is what you're addressing. And however, you know, that said, certainly somebody who's totally committed to their health, and they're going to go out and they're going to eat right, and they're going to exercise, and they're going to meditate, and they're going to do all these things, that they really have a strong will. Are they a delight to work with? You bet. Do they get better faster than people who expect their practitioner to do everything for them? You bet. The nice thing is, with BodyTalk, is I really feel like I don't have to restrict my practice to the people who are already doing all they can to help themselves. Is that my background is in Chinese medicine, that the will to change, the will to live, is considered a fundamental essence of the body that is stored in the kidneys, and that is something that in acupuncture you take into account. Is like, this person has deficient will, and there are actually acupuncture points that are labeled like the house of will. And so it is actually just another diagnostic that as an acupuncture physician I would take into effect. I wouldn't judge the person and say, no, I only take people who are ready to get better because I like my numbers and my statistics to be really good. I would help them with their deficient will. And I feel like my ability to do that with BodyTalk is much better than when all I had was the house of will points in the back, right? So I'm actually able to overcome that, or help them overcome that, and find their will. And that's a really nice thing to be able to say.
Can BodyTalk help to identify nutritional deficiencies or in the body and give you information?
Yes and no. Actually, you know, the idea of using muscle testing to identify deficiencies and then prescribe supplements is explicitly not what we're doing, because the yes and no is fallible. So to give a prescription based on that and that alone would be inappropriate. And it's my feeling that to use applied kinesiology principles to prescribe without another basis would be inappropriate, because there's no way to get an accurate answer, a 100% accurate answer. You can get useful answers. So it's not about that. Now, that said, some of our practitioners who do have a professional background in nutrition and in, recognizing the signs, may they use some of the principles to help refine their understanding? Yes, but to actually be the sole diagnostic principle, no. The other approach, though, and the one I actually prefer, is that when you end up identifying a nutritional deficiency, then the idea of supplementing it artificially is a bit like Western medicine. And it's a bit assuming the body's broken and it can never absorb that nutrient. I would far rather spend my energy at getting their digestive system to actually be in good health, to actually be getting the attention and the resources it needs to function properly and get nutrients out of food, because that's actually where we're supposed to get it from. And with that, I have seen dramatic results where people's assimilation of nutrients and ability to not only absorb proper nutrients out of their food has increased, but because they're, you know, I use the analogy of getting the two sides of the brain to work together. Wouldn't it be lovely to think with a whole mind instead of half? When you hook people up and get the internal communication working, it's not just their body that's working better, it's their mind. They are thinking more with a whole mind, and people tend to make better decisions. And so I find that the work tends to empower people to eat right, to meditate if they're close to it, right? To exercise, to actually to get more out of their food by being able to physically digest it better, but also being able to make better food choices in the first place. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. If the young lady that you were working on, if she kept coming back to you or one of the other practitioners, do you expect that her condition to get better with time, going back to the practitioner, or?
Yeah, you know, I won't say that every condition resolves immediately in one session. That would be highly unrealistic. I get many sessions that are quite dramatic in one session, but yeah, most health conditions actually have layers of dysfunction built into them. And you know, when I say it's end of session, I don't mean this person is perfect. I mean that I've gotten the signal from the muscle checking that, you know, that's enough for the body to process right now. And it will have to go off and do some healing. And then at a later session, it can work on another layer of miscommunication. But you know, if you get behind in your paperwork and you've got 1,400 messages in your email inbox and you've got a stack of mail on the desk and you actually are, you know, 2 years behind on filing your taxes, can you clean all that up in one day? No, you have to get a plan together and work on it. I would expect that, you know, that she would actually, but based on my experience, whereas in the old days I would be like always wanting somebody like, you know, give me 10 sessions before you see if it's working, right? Because of that peeling the layers off the onion. I don't feel like I need 10 sessions before they feel a difference, right? And yeah, it may not be resolved, but where they feel like they're taking a step in the right direction. Now, even though, I forgot your name already. Pamela. I'll remember now, all right? So even though she's not right yet, she did report feeling better right away. So it's already caught her attention that, I think I might have come to the right lecture tonight, and I might try some more of this. And that's really what I'm looking for out of a system, is that I don't have to wait, you know, for sessions and sessions and sessions before the person feels like they're getting a change. And that they feel different within 1 or 2 sessions usually with my work. And yes, it may take continued work. So, Pamela.
Well, just one comment and one question is, what I felt when you were working on it, what I got was things you mentioned, when you said kind of yes, are exactly what I have issues with. So it felt very right on. It surprised me because I'd forgotten some of these things I deal with a lot. Circulation is a big one. The second one is, so would I assume that I would go home and my body's still going to keep on talking to each other?
Exactly.
And then I might see slow.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things, one of my students who actually has become an instructor now in New York, one of the ways she puts this, I love, I'm stealing it from her, is she says, you know, just because we've got the two parts of the body shaking hands and now talking, doesn't mean they've said everything they need to say to each other. You know, we've just got them to shake hands, basically. And there may be an ongoing process, right? So, and you know, actually I was doing a lecture like this in New York a few years back, and I had a guy come up and it was his pelvis that was really locked up. So I was doing, you know, a straight leg raise kind of test on him. And, you know, when we started before the session, it was like, I mean, his legs barely came up off the table. You know, it was, you know, from laying flat on the table, his legs went to there, which is terrible. And so, how do you walk, dude? You know, well, he walked pretty funny. He walked with a lot of compensation, you know, doing this kind of, you know, right? So, and after the session, it went from, you know, not to there, but to about to there. So it was definitely better, but it was still lousy, right? But he went back, sat down. I took questions for another, 20 minutes before the evening wrapped up. And I said, wait a minute, come on up, back up. And he laid on the table, and it didn't go to there, it didn't go to there, it went to there. In about 20 minutes of processing once the communication links had been put together. Now, that doesn't always work that rapidly. Sometimes it's the next day. But what I find is that people don't backslide so much. You go get a great massage and oh man, it feels great. And the next day or 2 days afterwards, it's all back, right? With this work, my clients come back and they're holding what they got. They may have even improved over the week, right? And I take them a step further. And I would actually expect that by the end of the evening, Pamela's feeling a little bit better. I wouldn't expect her arm to go like that, right? Necessarily. But I'll tell you what, I was doing a class in Santa Barbara earlier this year, and one of the students said she had a shoulder problem, and I evaluated her shoulder, and it went to about like that. It was like that and like that. We did one link out of the protocol, and after that, and that was it, end of session. All right, well, let me check your shoulder. And it went to there and there, which was pretty dramatic for a 3-minute session. So I said, okay, well, go back and take your seat. And about 10 minutes later, I see her sitting there like this. And did you have a question? And she says, no, look, right? So, and then the next statement was, well, actually, I was scheduled to have surgery on this shoulder. Do you think I should still go? So some cases are like that, and some peeling the layers on. A question over here?
Does BodyTalk treat multiple sclerosis?
Well, okay, here's the full answer. BodyTalk doesn't treat anything, okay? So we don't have a treatment for back pain, although my results with back pain are tremendous and so much better than when I did acupuncture and herbs. But you know what? Every time I do a session on somebody, the actual balancing links, the communication balancing that I do of what to what is absolutely different for every client. And so in that sense, there's not a BodyTalk treatment for it. We don't give them a drug. We don't do a set procedure. Same thing with MS. There isn't a treatment for it. But what it is MS is a distortion of the immune system. And that can be reset, because most people that I know who've had MS didn't have it when they were young. They developed it at a certain point in life. Now, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, if you're 35 now and you've got MS and you didn't have it when you were 15, and most of the cells in your body have been replaced at least 20 times in the last 20 years, then it's not really genetic. It's not really hardwired. It must be something's gone wrong with the operating system, and I just start asking questions and I do it. Now, that's the theoretical answer. When my wife was 35, she had MS. And for her 35th birthday, I bought her crutches because on a bad day she couldn't walk. And well, I won't say how old she is now, but when she was 45, she was, that was a distant memory, and she does now still take African dance classes and hula classes and belly dance classes, and the crutches have been long since given to the thrift store, and she doesn't have MS. I had another case last year where I did one session on somebody with MS, and they actually live in another part of the country. I didn't do a follow-up, and she didn't go get follow-ups with, I guess there wasn't any practitioners right near her. But she felt so dramatically better after the one session that about 2 months later she actually went back to the doctor and she had another MRI, and it showed that about 80% of the lesions in the central nervous system had resolved. So what's going to be the answer for any particular case? I don't know. I'll follow the protocol. Is there hope? You bet. You bet. So.
You have much success with distance work?
Yeah, I do, actually. So the idea is that you're really just focusing awareness within the person's body-mind. And it's not a direct manipulation technique. It's an awareness technique. And it can be done. And I find quite good results with it. So we have a number of practitioners who do that.
I noticed you use sort of, you might say, hypnosis and power of suggestion when you were working on that lady. Because that's in effect your voice and sound as well as the touch. Seems to be quite important.
I've been told I have a nice voice, and I like that. I love microphones, you know. So, but but you know, really, I mean, that's a fair question. It's a good question. I will honor it. Is that how much is it power of suggestion that does this? You know, certainly you can't separate ever that a good, confident bedside manner is an essential part of the healing process. And certainly if I had walked up to Pamela and said, I don't really know if this is going to work, and I hope I don't hurt you, you know, that it would not have facilitated the process. That my confidence, my relaxation, my presence certainly facilitates it. But, you know, I really don't think I won over the autistic girl with charm, as charming as I am. And we do find tremendous results with animals. And you know, although I explained how I was getting to the answers and what I was actually balancing out loud with Pamela, I never ever explained the links to dogs. And I still get quite brilliant results. Where, I mean, literally, I had one of my patients. I don't work on dogs by hanging out my shingle. I'm not a vet, and so I don't advertise it. But if one of my patients wants me to treat one of their animals, I usually do if I can. And she brought her 14-year-old dog, Fred, who had cancerous lumps all over him, and the vet had diagnosed it as cancer, and had advised that she put Fred down, and she just couldn't do it. And she says, I don't want to make him suffer. I want him to go naturally, or I want him to heal, one or the other, but, you know, can you help him? And I did one session, and I didn't say a word during the session. And all of the cancerous lumps fell off in 2 weeks, and Fred lived for another 2 years. And I don't think it was power of suggestion. And I mean, not to say that there isn't something real that a confident manner doesn't help the process, but it's not hypnosis. Pamela?
You know, any kind of medication for depression, etc., and you wanted to work with this, would you take yourself off medication and then work with it, or?
You know, with medication in general, the answer is and always has to be that you have to work with the physician who prescribed it. Because some medications you can make a decision to say, you know, that's just not working for me, and it's safe to do that. You can take that personal responsibility. And there are some medications that really would be extremely risky to just go off and not taper. And, you know, so you really, and really only an MD, who is the worst person who prescribed it, can give you that answer. So, you know, in practice, have I gotten helped a lot of people reduce or eliminate their medications? Absolutely. I insist they work with their prescribing physician to monitor their condition. And to find out, you know, because in some cases, you know, sometimes being on medication can slow the results, because the medication can be a continuing stress on the body and has side effects. And so in some cases, theoretically, it might be advantageous to go off the medication, but I will never give counsel on that in specific cases, because I don't have enough training to know, and I'm not licensed to say. So, you know, they have to talk to their doctor and say, could I try going off of it, and what would be the risk factors and so on, and then make that decision personally with their physician. So, yeah, over here.
Continuation of that, a question about schizophrenia, bipolar, so-called endogenous depression. Have you worked with that, and have you worked with any physicians, other physicians who are open to working in tandem with you about those kind of psychiatric disorders?
I've worked a little bit with some of those conditions. It's more with the bipolar, not the full as schizophrenic, and have made progress. And interestingly, a growing number of the students taking my classes are actually psychologists and psychotherapists, because they're finding that this work is so invaluable. Limited case of, there's certain kinds of conditions that seem to not come in my door that much, and I think it gets back to, you know, what Dan was talking about as will, is capacity for change. And once people are in a heavily medicated situation for certain kinds of things, including personality disorder, they often I don't seem to get access to them, so I don't have that much experience. So for the lady in the back who asked, can you work on yourself? What we find is that when you are doing good work with other people, you are actually working on yourself. And so, you know, one of the truest things to say about any healing art is that to make a distinction between the healer and the healee is a farce. And so when you're in a good space and relaxed with the work and being there to help others, it actually, that space and the way we teach to do the protocol eventually tends to foster more clarity of mind in the practitioner. And that's certainly been my personal experience over time. So, yeah. Kind of in conclusion, to really talk about, answer a couple of the questions that came up, and including, and it was a good question about, well, how much of this is that, you know, I have a special ability to heal and so on, and how much of it is the system really works? And that's really an excellent question. A few years ago, I was on the East Coast, and I was doing my first BodyTalk class on the East Coast. I was in Rhode Island, and an old friend of mine in New York, you know, we touched base that that I was going to be there, and she had gotten treatments from me before when she'd visited Hawaii, and she said, well, I'd love to see you, and you know, while you're here. And so we met up in Connecticut halfway and talked, and I ended up giving her a BodyTalk session, and while we were, you know, visiting for a few hours. And it was a short session, it was maybe 20 minutes or something like that. But using one of the first techniques we teach in that 4-day class to release an actual key joint in the skull that limits breathing if it's stuck. She was able to breathe clearly for the first time in her life, to take nice full breaths out of a short session. And it just really caught her attention. And she was like, we were running out of time, and I had to drive back to, you know, to get to where I needed to be and everything. But I happened to have a book, one of Dr. Veltheim's books on the BodyTalk system. She said, well, what is this stuff? And I gave her the short explanation. She says, but what is it, right? So I handed her the book and I said, read this. Well, she calls me a week or two later and she says, the book says anybody can do this. And I said, yeah. And she says, no, wait. You're Dr. Kaimi, and you've studied all these things, and you know Western medicine pretty good, and you know Chinese medicine really well, and you know all these things. You've studied all this stuff, taken all these classes. It works because you're special. I said, well, hold on. Let's separate the issues here. I am special, and the system works, right? So don't forget modest, right? So, and she said, right. It works because you're Dr. Kaimi. And I said, no, not really. So she read the book some more, and she called me back, and she said, really? And I said, yes. She flew out to California, took my next class on the West Coast, and she was quite sure she wouldn't be able to do it because here's her healthcare background. She's received a massage and acupuncture. Well, let's see, she was a musician. And she had some experience in internet marketing. Yep, that's it for her healthcare background, right? So she took the class, and you know, after the class, she went home, and she was quite sure that she wasn't going to be able to do it because you have to be special and know a lot of stuff about the body and be smart and all those things, right? But she went home, and one thing she's not is shy. You know, she's a New Yorker, right? So she called up all of her friends and said, I just took this most amazing class, and I want to practice, and you have to come over. So she got all her friends to come over and for 2 weeks, and she was just giving away sessions, practicing and practicing and practicing. And after 2 weeks, her friends started calling her back and says, you know, I've been feeling so good since you did that session. I've got such and such, this friend who's got this condition that nobody else can help. Can I send them to you? And she's like, okay. And then the next question is, well, what do you charge? Well, I don't know. I guess I should take a donation. And And so she started getting referrals within 2 weeks. And after 4 weeks, she took the class again with another instructor and took her certification exam because she'd read the manual 4 times. And just out of enthusiasm, right? And after 6 weeks after she took the initial class, she had rented office space in Manhattan and switched her career to being BodyTalk practitioner. And she was getting incredible results with people who'd been to see lots of practitioners, talented practitioners, highly trained practitioners, and weren't getting results. And they went to see her out of her taking a 4-day course twice and proving she'd read the manual by taking the exam. And she was getting all these results. Well, after 6 months, she came to me and she says, Kaimi, you know, I can't stop talking about BodyTalk. Can I teach it? And she'd already started a massage school training program so she could get some kind of healthcare license. And so we said, sure, you have to finish your massage license, so you have some kind of healthcare license first before we'll let you teach. But then, okay. So she entered the instructor training program, and she's been instructor for 3 years now. And, or 2 years, 3 years, something like that, 2 years. And she's getting such good results, and she's training good students, that one of my colleagues in Philadelphia, Matt Newell, who is the leading brain injury rehab guy in the world, as far as I can tell. He is the leading rehab guy for brain injury in the world. He's had her come to Philadelphia and train everybody in his clinic in BodyTalk because he went to her class, thought she was a great instructor and a keen practitioner, and he has been the leading guy for some years. And now with BodyTalk, he just feels like his results have soared through the roof. And I've been learning to watch bigger miracles in my life because of my association with Matt Newell. And, you know, last year at about this time, he actually had 2 families visiting from Italy to visit his clinic because their kids were severely brain injured. And it was a huge financial burden for them to come all the way to America for 1 week. And so he wanted those kids to have everything they could have. And he put the kids, the families, and the interpreters and himself on the train from Philly to New York while I was teaching a class, and brought both kids to see me during a class. So I saw them on lunch break. And I had Matt there to answer questions about the brain that I didn't know. I knew the BodyTalk system better than he did. I had the family there to answer questions about the kids, and the interpreter to translate because they were Italian, right? And we did good sessions on those 2 kids, and they went back to Philly, and Matt worked with them for a week and sent them home. Now, neither one of those kids could walk, and the 16-year-old was literally twisted up, could not crawl, could not speak, you know, had no language. He actually reads 5 languages, but he can't speak. And so somewhere locked inside that dysfunctional body is a brilliant mind, but that couldn't get out and couldn't control his body. And he had poor digestion. And I saw Matt 3 months later, and the little girl was 6 years old and could sort of crawl a little bit on a good day and had no language. And I saw Matt 3 months later, and between his work and my work, and a lot of his work now is BodyTalk, both kids are learning to walk after 3 months. So actually, you know, it's expectations. So brain injured kids don't graduate from Matt's program until they can ballroom dance. Because until you can ballroom dance, you're brain injured. I hate to say what that means for many of you. Right? So he's got high standards. So, all right. All right. So I think that's probably a good way to wrap this up. You know, if people ask me in 15 words or less what I do for a living these days, since I learned BodyTalk, I say, gosh, I sit around, I do almost nothing, because really this pulling on the arm and tapping on the head, it's next to nothing. I sit around, I do next to nothing, and I get paid to watch miracles all day long. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. So, all right.